Hello, welcome to Culinary Arts 1. My name is Chef Frank Tony Guzzo, and I'll be your instructor for this session. All right, now, what is Culinary Arts 1 about? It's about building your flavors when you're cooking food. You'll see, for argument's sake, sometimes I'll ask a person, how come you're doing things that way? I don't know. That's the way my mother did it, or that's the way I was taught. You'll see, though, that there's no magic, there's no tricks in cooking. It's all about putting things together in a certain order, using proper techniques and methods. And that's all it's about. You'll see that in your manual that you have, each week is what we'll be doing. And you'll see this is a 12-week course. Today, I'm just going to talk to you a bit about the equipment you need and start some stocks for you. All right? But you'll see each week, up to week 12, you do make a nice product. Now, if there's anything in here that you don't like if you don't like onions, you don't like garlic, you don't use pork, substitute. It's not hard to substitute. You'll see that part of this program you do get to talk to the chef. Or you can email them and say, okay, I don't like garlic. What's a good substitute in that, okay? So don't worry about that. Also, after I will show you what equipment you need for not only this course, but if you intend to take other courses. Hopefully, we're back in the college soon. But until then, obviously, we're doing things online. So the first thing that we're going to do today is I'm just going to show you some of the vegetables in that we have, because we're going to start off with those 3 stocks as I mentioned. Now, here I just have a tray with the vegetables I need for my stocks, all 3 stocks. You'll see that I have some chicken bones here to make a chicken stock. I've got fish stock here to make fish stock. And I've got some veal and beef bones to make the beef stock. Now, with the beef bones, obviously you see, well, where are they? There's not enough there. I've got them roasting already. And what I did, I'll just get them for you to show you. What I'm doing is slowly roasting them in the oven. You'll see that I already have my vegetables in there. And this, believe me, this smells wonderful, even though it's just bones. But what this does is color the bones, and it changes the flavor of the beef stock. Instead of just getting a gray colored beef stock, you'll see it'll pick up the colors from here, and you'll have a brown beef stock. Also, the caramelization of the sugars and all that give it a unique flavor. I'm just going to put that back in the oven for now. Okay, first thing I'm going to do here is prep for the chicken stock. And again, I got bones here. Now, you'll see that with these bones here, we have just pieces of carcass. You can buy them like this. You'll see from butchers. You'll see that one of the things is that you'll see bones, and you'll also see little bits of white in there, like here, right there. That's called cartilage. That tells you that this bird wasn't that old before it went to market. What that symbolizes too, with that whiteness in there, that's cartilage, meaning that if the bird was older, it will develop into bone, but right now it's not. That has gelatin in it. If you've ever made a chicken stock and you saw that after you took it out of the fridge, it was kind of a jello effect to it, that's because of that, and that also gives it flavor, or what we call the body. You'll see that, you just taste the liquid and you think, wow, that tastes like chicken. That's why, because of that. Also, older birds will have the same effect. All right, like I'm talking really old birds. These are the ones we call stewing hens. They're the ones that laid eggs and then they went to market. All right, so they're tough and chewy, but very flavorful. So with these here, I'm just going to put them in a pot. All right, just like that. Now, I'm going to start them without the vegetables in first. Now, it doesn't matter what stock, whether it be chicken, beef, fish, vegetable stock. You always start out with cold water. So I'm just going to put some cold water into there. Now, the reason we start off with cold water is simply because if you start off with hot water, what it does is seal the pores of the bones. and it's very hard to get the flavor out of it. Not only that, it also seals the impurities into the bones. You want to get rid of those impurities. All right, so there's my water in there. Now, what will happen is with this cold water, as it heats up, what's going to happen is the cold water, as it warms up, is going to draw out the impurities, and they're going to come to the top, and we have to skim them off, and you'll see that you wind up with a nice clear stock, and then you just let it simmer. Now, I'm just going to, as it heats up, I'm just going to move it around a bit, just so it doesn't stick to the bottom. And then after, you'll see that there will be what we call scum coming up to the top. What I'll do then is just take a ladle here and just skim it and put it in here. You don't pour that down the drain, by the way. You'll probably clog up your sinks. Let it get cold, maybe put in a little container, freeze it, and then put it in the organics. All right, so I'm just going to put that on our stove. Right now, with the fish stock, I've got nice bones here. These are from halibut. You'll see that you get a milder tasting stock if you use bones from a white flesh fish. You'll see that arguably the most popular salmon fish bones out there, you can get salmon galore. Go to any fish market down the St. Lawrence Market and you can buy all the salmon bones you want, and it will make a lovely stock. But then afterwards, when you taste it, you'll get a bit of a rancid taste afterwards. That's because the darker the flesh, the fattier the fish. So what you want to do is use a light flesh bones, and you'll see that you eliminate that rancid aftertaste. So we have that. And here, just to show you now our vegetables. All right, obviously we've got some onions here. I've got some fresh thyme and parsley stems here. That's going to be for our little sachet. I've got some carrots that I peeled, some celery that I washed. All right, now with leek, okay, the best way to clean leek, it's very simple. Take off just a bit of the end, not too much. You'll see that root part there, that's where it's held together. Now with leek, we don't tend to use this darker piece because it tends to be bitter. And then just split it down the middle. All right, you see how it stays together. Now what you do is under cold running water, you'll see that there is quite a bit of soil in there. And just rinse it out. Okay, and you're ready to go. See, there's some mud in there and that. And these have already been washed. I've got a bit of tomato paste for my beef stock. Now, you'll see that for the beef stock and the fish stock, red and white wine they want us to put in, but I'm not a big fan of putting wine in simply because you'll see that it tends to give the stock a certain flavor. Now with a stock, let's say a fish stock, I can make a beautiful sauce with it. Yes, the wine will complement it. But if I'm making something like a chowder, wine doesn't taste very good in there. So I don't want it in there. Now, as I said, I'm heating up the fish stock over there. Afterwards, you'll see that it calls for some carrot, celery, and onion. Let me just move that away. Okay, so some carrot, piece of celery, and an onion. Now, this technically is what we call a mirepoix. All right, and what it is a flavoring. The chicken is our primary flavor. But to make that taste better, we add in some other flavors. In this case here, your mirepoix. Now, if it's a very light stock like fish, I don't put in the carrot. I may put in some leek because carrot is a bit too sweet, and you'll see that it'll darken up the stock. So, one of the first things is how to peel an onion. It may sound silly, but this is how. Right, I just got a little waste bowl here. You'll see that a lot of people cut all that off, cut all the root off, and then they're left with just the middle. But what you do is with the root here, leave it on for now. Okay, and from the other side, go down. Okay, go peel towards that root. There's a reason for this. I'll show you in a sec. Okay, now with the root, I'm just going to barely go under it, and there you go. All right? Now, the reason we do this is anytime, there's a few exceptions, but for the most part, always cut through the root first, like that. All right? You'll see that now I've got half an onion, but it stays together. Okay, because that root system is still on, so it's easier to manage. Now, I will talk about our knives afterwards, but for now I just want to cut up our mirepoix. Now, I'm right-handed, so obviously my knife is in my right hand. First thing, don't hold your knife like this. Choke up on it a bit like that. All right, you'll see you get better control. Also, don't go like that. You're going to dull your knife. What you do is start your knife like this and go down and forward. Like that. You hear no clunking. So you put your product there, go down and forward. Down and forward. Okay, just like that. Now, my right hand is holding the knife. My left hand is holding the product. This is where, if you don't hold it properly, your left hand can get cut. All right? You'll see that, for argument's sake, is that if you hold it like that, you'll see that one time you're going to cut your fingers off, just like that, okay? Or else some people hold it like that and they're going to cut their thumb. What you do is hold it like a crab, okay? So you'll see that my middle finger is straight up and down. All my other fingers are behind it. Not like this. Tuck your fingernails in. My pinky and my thumb are way back there. So now, see, you can go right up to it and your finger acts as a brake. All right? So down and forward, just like this. Now, depending on how long your stock takes to cook, like these are about, let's call it almost 3/4 by 3/4 inch, because to make a proper chicken stock, it does take about 3 to 4 hours of gentle simmering, not boiling. All right? So we can leave these fairly big because we're sort of assured that the flavor will come out of them. I'm just going to put these in a bowl here. All right, now with the onion, there's the root there. What I'm going to do is pull my knife, go past the root, and then go down. I'm just going to do that twice. So I've got 2 cuts in there, and it's still moving around on me, which is what you want. So let me just cut that up. Because we're using this as a stock, I will keep the root there. All right, so there's my mirepoix for the fish. All right. Now, for the fish stock is like vegetable stock. Within 45 minutes, it gives off all its flavor. If you boil it after that, it's not really worth it. All right, so that means that I want to make the vegetables nice and small for this. All right, so they give off their flavor also. So instead of carrot, I'm going to use a leek. I'm going to use a piece of celery. And because I have leek, I'm going to use just half an onion. All right? So with your celery, when you're cutting celery, don't try and cut the whole thing. Cut it in half so you manage it better. And now I'm just going to cut little pieces like this. All right. Just like that. Now, again, I'm going to hold them with my pinky and my thumb and just go down and forward. You see? And when I get to my hand, because I have it properly positioned, it stops. All right, just like that. My leek, because I only took off a bit of the root, it's still together, just like the onion. I'm just going to slice that down like that, and then again, down and forward, down and forward. See, when you're cooking something, except like when I'm bringing something up to a simmer like the chicken stock, you try and get all your preparation done before you go to the stove. So it's not like something cooking on the stove, you're still having to cut stuff and then, oh my God, I forgot this and that. And that's when accidents happen. Now, with the onion, I kept that to last because some people always ask, how do you cut an onion without crying? First of all, the reason they cry is you'll see that in your onion, there's little cells. And if you just go like this, and then let's say, some people chop, 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 you're crushing those cells, the vapor comes up to your face, it goes up your nose, and you start to cry, all right? Like these onion goggles that you buy really aren't worth it because it's the vapor going in your nose to your tear ducts, not through your eyes. But if you want a finely chopped onion, all right, again, this one has the root on right there. I'm just going to show you something. You see how I'm not cutting through the end? Okay, if you were counting, I have 18 cuts this way in this onion, but you see because I kept the root on, it's still there. Now, what you do now is just down and forward, okay, just like that. And all the vapor stays down at the table because you're not really crushing it, you're just opening it up. Okay, just like that. And there's your finely diced onion without crying or anything else. Okay, so that's for the fish. Now, for the beef stock, these are about ready that I could put in a pot, but now I'm going to put in a bit of tomato paste, about a tablespoon or so. This is about 1 kilo of bones in here, by the way. And what this does, besides giving it a bit of flavor, okay, what it will do is help break down the proteins of the beef. And you'll see it actually gives it a bit more flavor because acidity helps break down protein. And by the way, that carrot right there, it'll probably be the tastiest carrot you've ever tasted because it's done in some fat there, beef fat. Okay, now you see at the bottom, there's some people call it just burnt stuff. Mine isn't burnt. Some people, have to scrub when they wash that. I look at it as extra flavor. I'll show you what I mean afterwards, okay? So, I'm going to put these back in the oven for a couple of minutes and let them go. Now, by the way, I have this down here, this green towel, simply because when you put something hot on the table, try and protect it from your nice cutting board, all right, or else you'll get burn marks on your cutting board. So, I'm ready to go to the stove with my fish stock, to start my fish stock. In a couple of minutes, I can probably use that for my chicken stock. My beef stock will take a couple of minutes. Now, another secondary flavor that we're going to use is called a spice bag or a sachet. So what it is just a bundle of herbs. I've got some fresh herbs and parsley, as I mentioned here. I've got some white and black peppercorn here. I've got a couple of bay leaves. And what I'm going to do is make a spice bag for all three. But before I do that, I notice that my chicken stock is just about coming to a boil. So let me bring it over here to show you. All right, you see that? That's the scum. That's blood and other impurities that come to the top. If you don't remove that, that goes back into the stock. It may make it bitter and it may make it cloudy. So, all you do is dip your ladle just below the ground, sorry, the top there. Now, we'll see that this is a continuous work, if you want to call it that. You'll see that it gives off, like I took out most of the blood now. Now you'll see that if there is any fat in the skin or on the bones and that, that's going to start to melt now. But now that I got that main scum off. Now I can add the mirepoix to that. And now this goes back on the stove. Again, with this, I'm going to keep using it. Don't throw that down the drain after. Let it get cold, maybe freeze it in a container and then throw it into your organic bin. All right, now for all three of these, as I said, need a spice bag. Now this is cheesecloth. We're going to hold all the spices and the herbs in there. Now, the reason we do it this way is that we can just pull them all out at once. You can just put them in there, but this way here it's just more convenient. You'll see that all of them will get a bit of bay leaf. Now, with the fish stock, I'm only going to put in a few because we don't want it too strong, because fish is a delicate. Some parsley stems. Now, I'm not going to put any thyme in the fish stock simply because, again, it's too strong. All right, now, you'll see that what I'm going to do now is use the back of my knife and just smack it, and what that does is release some of the oils. Okay, so that's good like that. Now, the peppercorns, you don't just put them in because they have to be cracked first or they don't give out much flavor. Now, I've got some white peppercorn here. I'm going to use that for the chicken stock and the fish stock because it will transfer colors. The black one here I'll use for the beef. Now, to crack these, just get one of your pots. You're not going to play whack-a-mole or anything, but just start at the edge and roll forward like I am. And you don't have to make it so that they're fine, that you can use them, like for seasoning. You just want to crack them so they give out some flavor. Okay? And by the way, black peppercorn and white peppercorn have the same strength. It's just that white peppercorn are the center of the black peppercorn when you let it mature more. Okay, so now I've got some butcher twine here. Again, at home, you can just put that right into your stock, but don't put too many. And just what you do is grab each four corners, give it a little twist, and there's your sachet or your spice bag. Okay, this one is for the fish here. All right, I'll just put that over there, and this big one here is for the beef. Now, the beef itself is going to take about 6 to 8 hours to make properly. As I mentioned before, the fish stock is about 3 to 4, the chicken stock is about 3 to 4 hours, and the fish stock about 45 minutes. Okay, with my chicken one, I'm going to put it into my chicken. All right, the beef stock, I'll wait a bit. I'll just keep these over there. All right, so what we can do now is go over to the stove. All right? Now, with our chicken stock, we're over at the stove here. You see how you just let it simmer. I'm not boiling it, just a nice gentle simmer. If you boil it, you'll see that what happens is the impurities work their way back down into your stock and they don't want to come back up. See, now I'm just getting a bit of fat here. And again, just barely put your ladle underneath the top of your liquid. Okay, let me just get a clean one. I just want to show you something. So you see that? It's nice and clear already. All right, now, with this, all you have to do now is babysit it. Again, very gentle, and we just let it reduce down for about 3 or 4 hours. Again, if it gets too low, add a bit of water to it, because always remember this, flavor doesn't evaporate. Flavor doesn't evaporate, just moisture does. So if you have, let's say, 4 liters of chicken stock, you reduce it down to 2 liters, you have the flavor of 4 liters of chicken stock in that 2 liters. So I'm just going to move this over to the side now and just let it go nicely. All right, now, the beef stock here, okay, it's nicely caramelized. Now I'm going to put it in a pot. And for a kilo of bones, it's going to take about 4 liters of water. So just let me fill that up. All right, so here's my cold water, and you see that it's already transferring its color. Okay, and that also transfers flavor. Now I'm going to add that spice bag we made earlier. Now with this here, all right, a lot of people see that they have to do a bit of work cleaning that. First of all, I don't need the beef fat that melted off of the bones, so I'm just going to pour that into my organic container there. Now with this here, some people look at it, as I mentioned, oh no, I got to scrub that. I look at it as unused flavor. Again, moisture came off of the bones, came off of the vegetables, went to the bottom, the moisture evaporated, left behind its flavor. This is what we call fond, F-O-N-D. This is what gives you that nicer flavor, whether it's in a stock or let's just say for argument's sake I cooked a nice roast. What I would do now is if I want to make a nice sauce, I would have kept that fat in there. Let's say it was 1/4 cup. Add 1/4 cup of flour. You'll see this as the lessons go on. And then slowly added some beef stock to it. And you'll see that you get what we call an espagnole. Lovely word, espagnole. English translation, gravy. All right, so what I want to do is lift this up. Now, the book tells you to use the red wine here. Again, I'm not a big fan of using alcohol when you're making stocks. But what I'm doing is getting it nice and hot, and I just have some water here. Now, when you do this, stand back a bit because sometimes it will flash up on you. Okay, that didn't. But you see right away that water turned that nice color? Now what you do is rub this. All right? And just keep rubbing it. And you see now, look at that water. Not even 30 seconds ago. It was clear. Now it's got that nice brown. All right, and just keep rubbing it like this. This does two things. It picks off that flavor that's stuck on the bottom and transfer it to the water that you can use in your stock. And second of all, you'll see that by adding that water, and then again, I've got a bit of a flame going on under here. It not only lifts off the flavor, but it helps you clean your roasting pan. All right, so it's less of a scrub. Okay, and that's fine like that. Now again, that was a couple of minutes, not even. And look at that, we picked up all that lovely flavor that most people throw down the drain. We're going to use that. Our last stock we have to do is the fish stock. Now with this one here, you'll see that they want you to sweat the vegetables a bit before you add the fish. What that does, what sweating means first of all is cooking without browning. So all you want to do is heat it up enough so that the flavors start to come out, but you don't want to brown it, especially in the fish stock, because you don't want that brownish color in the fish stock. You want that nice clear, just like a chicken stock. All right? And the reason we cook them up ahead before we add the fish is simply because the fish will give off their flavor so fast, the vegetables won't. So by sweating them, they'll go up. Now, it says use butter. I just got a bit of olive oil. And again, you don't need much. That's not even a half teaspoon. All you have to do is have enough to barely cover the bottom of the pan. Again, you don't, if you put a lot of oil in there, you just have to take it out afterwards. Here's those finely diced vegetables. That's the spice bag I'm going to put in after. All right, now what you do, I'll show you in later lessons, you always make sure that your oil is hot enough. What I'm going to do is just put in a few pieces of my diced vegetable. When I see it starting to move around a bit, that's it. Okay, it's ready for cooking. Now, you're not going to get much scum. I'm skipping over to the beef stock for a sec. You're not going to get much scum from this like you did the chicken stock, simply because the heat of the oven cooked it a bit. But what you are getting is some fat there. So you'll see afterwards I'm going to skim it a bit and then just let it simmer. All right, so I see my little onion moving, and you should hear a nice little sizzle. You hear that? It's a very gentle sizzle. Now, what you want to do, you see how dull those vegetables are, like they're not very shiny. You'll see that when they're sweated, they look very shiny, and that's because the juices are coming out. It almost looks, some people call it frosty, but it's actually just shiny. Okay, meanwhile, just while I'm waiting for that, again, just like I did with the chicken stock, the beef stock, you just barely go in, and I'm just taking off the grease. Don't worry with the chicken and the beef stock if you don't get all the grease and fat off, because you'll see that when the stock cools down in the fridge, the fat stays on top and it actually solidifies. So it's actually easier to take away then. Okay, so these look shiny, or as some people say, frosty. So we can add in the fish bones now. Now, the fish bones were frozen. All right, so they're wet. They're not going to sweat, so I'm just going to move them around. Now, what they want us to do now is add that white wine. I'm not going to. I'm just going to go straight to the water. And there's our cold water in there. Remember, all three were started with cold water, the spice bag. Now, the one thing you don't put in a stock is salt. The reason is we don't know what we want to do with this. For argument's sake, I mentioned before, let's say I reduce 4 liters of chicken stock into 2 liters of chicken stock. You not only fortify that nice chicken flavor, but you'll fortify the salt flavor and it gets too salty. So salt can be a last minute thing. In fact, you'll see that if you make these stocks and you do them properly and you taste them after, you'll sort of go whippy-do. Like, what's the big thing? 4 hours it took to make something that barely tastes like chicken. Don't forget that. Just take a bit of that chicken now, put it in a little cup and just add a grain or two of salt, and you wouldn't believe the flavor now, because salt is an enhancer. So this is why we tend not to use it at the beginning. All right, so there's my 3 stocks, and now I just have to babysit and skim them as I need to. My chicken stock is nice and clear now. Let me just, again, it's a constant thing about skimming. If it gives off scum, then it's your job to skim it. Okay, look at that. Look how clear that is already. That means that it's not going to taste bitter, and it's going to have the eye appeal also. All right, so now I'll just come over here every once in a while and babysit them. I'll show you near the end of the lesson what's happening and what to do with them. But now we're going to go back to our table. Now, you'll see that as our stocks are simmering, I'll just discuss something else here. And this is, you'll see on page 17 of your manual, it says required equipment. Now, you'll see that if you take other courses, they may ask you to have other stuff, but this will do you for Culinary 1 anyway, all right? Now, you'll see that your main tool and your most important tool in the kitchen is your chef knife, all right? This, some people call it a French knife, chef knife, 2 words, same thing, all right? It is your workhorse of the kitchen. I showed you how to hold it properly. I'll show you how to keep it sharp after. But anyways, I'll talk more about that afterwards. But I have 2 kinds here, all right? One of them here, sorry, there's a few blotches on it. This one here with the black handle, that actually cost over $200. It's one of those Japanese swords. This one here, or swords, I should say blades, actually. This one here is about 45 bucks. Okay, 45 to 50 bucks. Not that expensive. They both do the job. You'll see most chefs in the kitchen use this because it's inexpensive, but if you keep it sharp, it's just as good. The difference is the quality of steel. The more expensive knives use a higher quality of steel. The inexpensive, I don't want to call them cheap knives because they're not cheap. The inexpensive knives is like the metal is a bit softer, so it tends to dull a bit more. But that's okay. I'm going to show you how to sharpen them, okay? So either or, all right? You'll see that it calls for a serrated knife. Now, serrated knife is another name for a bread knife, all right? So I'll just put that there. And it calls for a boning knife. Now, this is a boning knife. You'll see that with this, you can take apart a whole carcass of an animal. You either hold it sometimes like a surgeon like this, or sometimes like they do in the movies like that, all right, to take apart your meat. Now, you'll see that with this, especially I think it's in week 9 or 10, week 10 I think, I'm going to show you how to take the breast meat off of the bones, all right? And it's nice to have this. Again, I'll talk about the knives afterwards, okay? So, those are your main tools, with the French knife being your other one. My second most important tool in the kitchen, my paring knife. All right? It only costs $5-6, but when I don't see this, I start to panic. Like when you prepare your food, I always have the knives I use on the table and the equipment I need on the table. So again, you're not going around hunting for it. All right, so this little guy here, you saw me peel onions and that. You'll see in some cases, if it's sharp enough, and mine is sharp enough, it can substitute for a boning knife in some cases. So that's your main knives. All right, now, what keeps it sharp is a horning steel. All right? A horning steel. Now, this does not sharpen your knife. What it does is called truing your knife. If you look at a dull knife under a microscope, let's say that's the tip. That's what it looks like that. That's a sharp knife. That's a dull knife. All right? If you use a stone or a grinder, it removes the parts that moved, and actually it shortens a knife, and you have a sharp knife again. What this does here is move them back into place. Every chef always has that on the table to sharpen their knife. So that's invaluable. Okay, and you'll see that with these, there's different kinds. There's the metal ones. There's some that are actually diamond encrusted, okay, like that fine diamond dust. They're like, it's not like you can wear them as jewelry or anything. And you'll see that those do a better job of sharpening, but again, very expensive. Or else there are ones that are made out of ceramic, not metal. And those sharpen them very good, but the problem with those, if that was a ceramic stone, or sorry, a horning steel, they would have broke it. All right, so these ones here are about $30-40. Now, a knife bag or a toolbox, obviously you're doing this course at home, but when you do come to the college, you'll see most of the students buy either a little toolbox from one of the, Lowe's, Home Depot, Rona, Canadian Tire, or such, home hardware, to carry their stuff in. You'll see that the bookstore does have knife bags, if you will, but most of them, I'm just going to bring mine to the camera just to show you. That's obviously Mastercraft is a Canadian Tire brand, but this is a toolbox. This costs about $50, but you'll see that there are lesser ones, $20-25 in that. But you'll see that it is something good to have to carry your equipment in. It doesn't matter what you do, just make sure you carry it safely to and fro, okay? Wooden spoons. Now, something like that. All right. Make sure you don't get the really skinny ones so that when you're moving around stuff, it doesn't snap on you. But again, we like to use wood when we're cooking simply because it's a neutral component. You'll see that if you tend to use metal on metal pots and that, sometimes it will impart a flavor or it may change the color. So this is neutral. Now, what we mean by metal spoons, like that. Some people call these serving spoons. But you'll see with these, one of them, like this solid one, picks up everything, including the juices or the sauce. Where this one here, if you just, like, let's say with the bones I had, picks up the bones but leaves that drippings behind. So these are really nice to have. A rubber spatula. A rubber spatula. This is mine here. This is actually a pastry scraper, but you know the rubber spatulas you have at home, those are fine for it. A whisk. You'll see that we do a lot of things with the whisk. It makes sauce smoothers. It combines sauces to make sauces for mixing egg and milk custards and that. When you do get one, make sure it's very flexible. All right, and it has let's call it wires in it. It makes it for a better, if you just get the ones with 3 or 4 wires, you'll see that it doesn't do a good job mixing. Okay, tongs. Again, nice pair of tongs. You'll see that with these, make sure that they have a bit of weight to them, and don't get the dollar store ones that if you put your finger like I am right now and press hard, it sort of bends. These are for picking up your chickens and that, so make sure that they're nice. All right, vegetable peeler. Again, nice little vegetable peeler like that. Comes in very handy. You don't have to buy the expensive ones there. A ladle. You saw what I use a ladle for, skimming and lifting up stalks and that. Actually, I'll just put that there. Now, you'll see it calls for a pastry brush. Again, in Culinary Arts 1, you don't need it, but if you take other courses, these are quite handy for brushing on butter to make things browner, or an egg wash for pies and that. All right, and you can get the natural brushes, or this one's a silicone one, up to you. Okay, now it says side towels. Obviously, you've got side towels at home. You'll see when you do eventually get your uniform that you will get a bag that has a chef hat in it with the apron and the towels in it. Okay, a plastic or a canvas bag for bringing the product home in. Obviously, this is when we're back at school. You'll see that a lot of supermarkets have these now. This is from Farm Boy. Longo's has them. Loblaws has them. Walmart has them. But what we like about these is that they open up and more or less turn into a box. Okay, and this is the type of container that we use at the college. Fits perfect in there. Okay, again, you don't have to get that, especially if you're working from home, obviously, but it comes in very handy. All right, now, measuring spoons and measuring cups. All right, don't be too, I call it the mad scientist, about getting to be exact. The only time you have to be exact is when we're doing pastry work. Cooking, you'll see the front of your book when you get it, Culinary Arts. We play. Add things together. Always remember this. There's a little math equation you should always remember. You can add, but you cannot subtract. Meaning, even if a recipe says a teaspoon of salt, don't ever do that. Put in a bit of salt. Taste it. Okay, it needs more. Put a bit more in. Once you put in too much, it's very hard to get it back out. All right? So, again, with these, use them. Use them if you need to, but I'd like you to try and guesstimate these things. All right, scissors. You'll see in later videos we use these scissors a lot. Okay, nice pair like that. Tasting spoon and tasting forks. Okay, like that. One's a bit bigger than the other one. All right, now I'm just going to bring, let me just move this stuff here. Okay, I'm just going to bring one of my stalks over just to show you something. Now this stalk is going nicely. I'm just going to skim it a bit. Okay, that's nice and clear. But the thing is when, you're at home, you can do this, but professionally we don't, is, some people stick their finger in the taste into, and needs a bit of salt and puts it in, and then they go back in with the same finger. You're contaminating that. At home, do what you want, but in a professional setting, we have to, we hold our students in that to higher standards. Other people will get a spoon like that, go in, taste it, well, it needs a bit of salt or whatever, puts that in, and then uses the same spoon that was in their mouth. The proper way to taste is pick up something with your spoon. Okay, you see there, I got the liquid. Pour it into another one without touching that spoon, and that's the one that goes in your mouth. Now, obviously that doesn't need salt in that. It's starting to get a bit of chicken taste, but what you do is when you lay them down, this is why I like two different size spoons. One of them, always goes into your food. One of them, always goes into their mouth. So that's the way you properly taste things. All right, let me just put that back where it belongs. All right, and then obviously a fork for eating in that, and you'll see that a small plate, unbreakable. You'll see in the kitchen, we don't want to use regular plates in a professional kitchen when we're doing stuff like this, simply because what may happen is if the plate breaks and all the shatter goes everywhere, we have to throw a lot of stuff out, okay? So that's your main equipment for the course. One thing I do like, and you'll see in later videos, is my little microplaner, especially if you're doing garlic, ginger, and stuff like that. I'll show you in later videos on that. So let me just put this stuff to the side. All right, so again, with the French knife, expensive, inexpensive. One thing is, it doesn't matter which one. Make sure that when you hold it in your hand clears the table, because that down and forward motion, for argument's sake, I'm going to use my boning knife. If I did that with my boning knife, your knuckles and hands are going to be very sore. Again, hold it like that. Now, when you're looking for a knife, make sure that it has a proper, let's call it, feel to it. Okay? It doesn't feel too light or it's not too heavy. This is just right balance. Now, this one here, you see that the end of the knife called a tang goes into the plastic, where this one here has an exposed tang that goes all the way to the end. A very cheap knife, you'll see that if you give it a good snap like that, it actually, you can feel that it only went in about 1/2 inch instead of at least 3/4 inch. This one here is a nice knife. Now, the other thing is too is that where do you purchase these? You'll see that the bookstore here has them online, but you'll see that Bed and Bath Time, you'll see even Walmart, Canadian Tire, all kinds of stores have these in there. And the thing is they do have the expensive ones or they do have the inexpensive ones. Choose the one you want. Just make sure it feels comfortable in your hand. And I wouldn't go longer than a 10-inch blade, 8 to 10 inches. If you go further, it's like using a sword. And if it's smaller, it's very hard to manipulate. Now, you'll see that if this was a classroom setting and some of the students were working, and even though they're practicing proper procedure like this, I would hear clunk, clunk, clunk. And that's because what's happening is that the knife is so dull that they're pressing so hard that when it does go through it, they get that clunk sound. And that's when I'll ask to see their knife, and I'm holding it upside down. And what you do with your thumb, be careful, just strum it like a guitar. Okay? If it's a dull knife, your thumb is going to go right over it. If it's sharp, you'll see that it actually catches your fingerprint. All right, now if it is dull, no problem. All right, with this here, now there's different ways of doing it. I find the best way is holding that in front of your chest at a 45-degree angle. I'm just going to do it like that, off like that. Here, you start at the front, and don't slide down like that. Just flick your wrist. You hear that nice? It's like ice skating. That's how you sharpen your knife. You don't have to go fast. There's no magic to it. You'll see that your steel more or less stays stationary. And the thing is, use your wrist. Don't use your arm. Or else you can't flick it like that. Okay? And that's how you sharpen the knife. Now, I'm going to bring back our stocks. All right, so there's my 3 stocks. Obviously, they need more time, but what I'm going to do afterwards is carefully strain them using some kind of sieve or strainer. All right, and then the whole key is cooling them down as quickly as you can. If you just strain them and let them lie on the table, these will go off very quickly, okay, or go sour. You'll see that if you cool them down properly in, let's say, a sink, put the stopper in, cold water with ice, and put the container of your stock in the middle and stir it every once in a while, it cools down faster. The faster you cool it down and get it in the fridge, you'll see that, for argument's sake, a beef stock will last you 8 to 10 days in the fridge. Chicken stock, 4 to 6 days. Fish stock will only last you about 3 to 4 days. But even if you're, I don't know what I'm going to do with that, I might as well throw it away. No, reduce it. If you don't have room in your freezer, technically you can reduce this down by about 70-75%. So that means that if you have 1,000 milliliters, which is a liter, you can reduce it down to about 250 milliliters. And you'll see that it's almost like, pancake syrup or maple syrup. It's nice and thick. Pour that into ice cube trays and freeze it. When it's frozen, put it into baggies. Anytime you want fresh stock, there you go. Okay, one ice cube of chicken stock, for argument's sake, added to a cup of hot water gives you a beautiful stock. Now, the other thing you got to be careful of is when it is sitting in the fridge too long, you'll see sometimes you will get little bubbles in your stock. And that's a sign that it may be going sour on you. And how you tell is, obviously if it smells, throw it down the drain. There's nothing you can do with it. If you taste it over the sink in case you spit it out, when you taste it and you think, oh no, that's not bad. In fact, I like that lemony flavor in there. I didn't use lemon for any of these stocks. When something goes bad, it doesn't necessarily taste bad right away. It actually has a citrus or a tangy taste to it. That's a sign to throw it away. You'll see that some people say, no, if you boil it up, you're going to kill the bacteria and it's good again. Not necessarily true. Yes, you will kill the bacteria. What you're not going to kill by boiling is the toxins that you've created with that bacteria that went bad on you, okay? So treat them good. And again, you'll see during the course, I'm going to use these for a variety of things, all right? Now, some say, well, I don't have time for 6 to 8 hours and blah, 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 blah. Obviously, we all have different lifestyles and that. You'll see that in a pinch, I also use a commercial product, but be careful. Most of the commercial products are just loaded with salt, all right? What I do is buy the no salt, well, I might as well mention it. I don't mind, they're a good product. The Campbell's no salt beef stock or chicken stock, that comes in a Tetra Pak. It's liquid, it's not powder. You'll see that with salt and a lot of the other products, they don't have to work as hard to make a nice product because the salt sort of enhances things. But when you don't use salt, you got to do things the proper way. So, yes, I do use that on occasion at home when I don't have time to make stocks or, be honest with you, bring some home from work. All right? So that's it on stocks. Now, you'll see that when you are at the college and a recipe does call for stocks, we do provide you for it. All right? These are just an example. These are the bases of cooking, the foundations. This is why I want to show you what they're like today. All right? So that concludes Lesson 1 in Culinary 1. I'll see you next time for Lesson 2 in Culinary 1. We'll be making some lovely salads. Thank you for watching.